We're live. Counting down. Welcome to another edition of the Willie Bragg Show, where I discuss what I like to discuss, and that's politics. Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck made it back. Well, he never really left, but is he relevant? It's like I asked about Adam Carolla the other day. Is he relevant? And yeah, you don't really hear much about Glenn Beck anymore. And it kind of started in the 2016 campaign, and I'll go into that in a minute. But he said something that was controversial, shall I say. And I'm going to play this video clip. It's a little long, but I'm going to fast forward it, and I'm going to share some words right afterwards. So give me a moment here, and we will begin.
The Olympics have already started in China. We'll see, obviously, the broadcast if you care to watch it. I hope that NBC loses every viewer they could possibly get on this propaganda show, because that's exactly what it is. It started with propaganda today.
Yes, it certainly did. And in fact, instead of me telling you the story, let me just give you a clip of the audio. This is Savannah Guthrie describing the events at the opening ceremonies today as a Uyghur, chosen by the Chinese Communist Party, is there to co-light the Olympic flame. Listen.
Like this moment is quite provocative. It's a statement from the Chinese President Xi Jinping to choose an athlete from the Uyghur minority. It is an in-your-face response to those Western nations, including the U.S., who have called this Chinese treatment of that group genocide and diplomatically boycotted these games. There will be much discussion about this.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she's stating a neutral fact, which plays into the propaganda of it all. She doesn't, I mean, even if she wanted to, which I'm not convinced she would, but we'll see when she comes home, she couldn't say anything differently, and NBC wouldn't want her to, because NBC is owned by NBC Universal, and they want their movies in China, because we are no longer American-centric at all. We've sold out to China. Just so you know, we don't claim that this is genocide. It is genocide. We have the documents, and you know what, I should bring them in on Monday, so you can see it. We don't have it on tape. We have a transcript that was smuggled out of China, where President Xi said, you know, they claim the Uyghurs are terrorists. And he said in a council where they were all talking about what to do with them, it's not enough. You've got to get the mothers, the wives, and the children. All of them have to be exterminated. That's what's happening in China, and we're turning a blind eye. And by the way, they're not exterminated immediately. You know, they can be sterilized, so they can't have any children, and then they can work at slave factories and make great products for us. Isn't that great? Jeez.
So, I mean, I don't know what you're supposed to do in this situation. I will say it's not that. You know, maybe you can't say this is a disgraceful piece of propaganda. It is based on Chinese Communist Party lies, and they will pay the price for this, hopefully for many years to come. Maybe you can't say that because you might get murdered. I understand that. Better than her approach, honestly, would be not to mention it at all. The reason they chose a Uyghur minority is to make people believe this genocide was not occurring. You then mention it, highlight it, and do not say that the facts of the matter, which is that this genocide is going on. You make it seem like it's a back and forth between warring political parties, one of which is somewhat unfairly categorizing it as a genocide. Rather, just watch the flame be lit and say nothing than what she did.
Yeah, I mean, you could compare this to A Home for the Jews, the movie that the Germans made, and everybody that participated in it was exterminated right after, sent to the gas chambers. It was a massive, massive lie. So this should tell us something, though. Beijing, the fact that the Winter Games are being held in Beijing, was it 4 years ago, Stu, or 6 years? When were the other Beijing Games? It wasn't that long ago. And this is the first time a city has had both games, ever. No city has ever been the host of the Summer and Winter Games before. But, I mean, hey, why not? You had the Olympics. I think this is a turning point. Beijing knew the last time that they had the Olympics, the Summer Olympics, it was a coming out, and China was saying, here we are. This is another huge propaganda event for them. China is saying, you know, look how far we've come. You know, freedom and democracy. Is it all that? Look at us. We're modern. We're new. We don't oppress people. This Winter Olympics actually is not that message. That was the message of the first Beijing. This Beijing Olympics, it's a giant middle finger. And we haven't seen a country that can build concentration camps, really since World War II. Build concentration camps, say they're going to liquidate a minority population, and then host the Olympics. Haven't seen it. I'm going to tell you about 2 Olympics. We know about 36, but I don't think we learned the right lesson on that one. But let me start with the 56 Olympics. In October 1956, the Soviet tanks rolled into Budapest with a mission of squashing the massive Hungarian uprising against the communist government. 3 weeks later, 2,500 Hungarians were dead, another 20,000 wounded, 22,000 more had been arrested, sentenced, and imprisoned, 350 had been executed. This is what communism always does. Let's not forget that. This is what communism always does. So the Olympics are coming, and the Hungarian water polo team was already in Melbourne, Australia for the...
Okay, hold on, Sarah. Let me just pause it and let me comment. I want to comment right now. The Uyghurs is a minority group in China. Practice Islam. They're one of the Islam. I mean, I'm sure there are probably some other Islamic communities in China, but Islam is one of the religions that's practiced in China. And what Glenn Beck is talking about, it was a Uyghur representatives at the Beijing Olympics opening ceremony, and he was commenting on basically what he considers propaganda. America, he claims, being sold out to China. Well, you know what? Any grain of truth there is to that result. You want to know why America has been sold to China? Because American politicians from both parties, not talking about establishing diplomatic ties with China, one of the best things Nixon did. I'm talking about, China, like any other country with regard to free trade. I'm an old-fashioned protectionist in that regard. Nothing against China when it comes to protectionism. I just, I want to protect American jobs from any other country around the world in that regard. So, and I don't blame China if they want to have an edge on trade with us or any other country. But Glenn Beck he has drank the free trade Kool-Aid for many, many years and has poked fun at protectionists. And this is a result of protection of global trade, corporately managed trades that he was in favor of for many years. So, Glenn Beck, you played a role in this. Glenn Beck believes that there's actual genocide against the Uyghurs. Well, let's go back in time. Let's go back during the Bush-Cheney era. Glenn Beck believed that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. He was a big-time supporter of the Iraq War and this so-called war against terrorism that was done by the Bush-Cheney years. He approved of torture. He approved of the Patriot Act, spying on all of us Americans. He approved of bombing the shit out of Iraq. He's still a big proponent of war against Iran. So, for Glenn Beck, that sat there and he fed you the lies of weapons of mass destruction and all this. Yeah, I mean, he's got some nerve to sit there and to echo Bush-Cheney era neoconservative talking points that he's echoing right now. And he'll tell you that he's not a neocon. He's a neocon. People like Glenn Beck is a neocon. Most of the mainstream talk show hosts on the right-wing radio, and you find on Fox News, all those motherfuckers are a neocon. The only one that's up there that's kind of on the mainstream of all the conservative talk show hosts that's not a neocon, and I got some problems with his politics, would be Tucker Carlson. But at least on some foreign policy positions, he's going to be more correct than incorrect. In fact, he probably sounds better on foreign policy than CNN and MSNBC these days. I'm talking about Tucker Carlson. But that doesn't mean I endorse it. I'm just saying a stop clock gets the right time twice a day. Glenn Beck eventually admitted that the Iraq War was a mistake, and he turned against it. He claimed, and Too late, too late, too late. You supported the Iraq War when it mattered to be opposed to it. At least Tucker Carlson was opposing it back in 2005. It was one thing to be a right wing Republican in the media or elected and support the Iraq War when it did. Still were wrong to do it, but when you turned against it during the Bush years, that's growth. That's that's evolving. And at least, Sean Hannity still drinks the Kool-Aid about the Iraq War. I mean, to this day. So, there are people worse than Glenn Beck in that regard. But here's another thing. He talks about camps, concentration camps, and prisons, and all of this. And I'm a little hesitant to use the term concentration camp in this context. But you talk about prisons that exist out there. And saying that the Uyghurs, the Chinese government, have these concentration camps or open prisons. Now, the biggest open prison in the world today, objectively, is the prison in Gaza. And Glenn Beck will criticize China for what Israel is kind of guilty of right now, because Glenn Beck is a Christian Zionist, and he believes in that if you don't support Israel, God's going to be pissed with you, and we got to go and rush into World War III, and he believes World War III is going to start with that conflict. That's Glenn Beck's beliefs. So anyway, so this is the kind of mentality we're talking about, and Caleb Maupin, who I don't agree with on everything, did a video a couple of years ago, 2019, I believe it was, on the connection between the religious right and the neoconservative movement, and how they're kind of for the same thing when it comes to foreign policy, but comes to that foreign policy conclusion from a different angle. Very interesting. I need to do a video on that eventually. But Uyghurs, the truth about the Uyghurs is that there is a propensity toward Islamist ideology, and so the Chinese government realizes that, and they don't want to have that problem any more than any country in the West in that regard. And that's not being Islamophobic saying that. And that's, and the thing about it is that it's not a Holocaust on the level that was going on. It's not even a Holocaust what's going on against the Uyghurs. But to compare it to what went on in Germany against the Jewish people, that was a Holocaust. That was extermination that existed in Hitler's Germany. What happened to the people in Cambodia, under the Khmer Rouge, under the regime of Pol Pot, that was a genocide. That the entire country was one massive concentration camp. That was genocide. Genocide was being done by Germany against the Jews and other people too. Genocide was being committed against the entire population of Cambodia by Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge. Those acts are genocide. What China is doing is a police action against what they consider propensity for, or a potential for terrorism in their country. And and that's what it comes down to. Now, he talks about China. He criticized China for bragging about traveling or advancing a long way since 1949. There's a lot of truth to that. As a socialist, is China my model? No, I could say some good things about China. They have universal health care. That's not a terrible thing. They have gone a long ways. I mean, China is a more free society today than it was during the Cultural Revolution of Mao, for example. There's been progress being made, and if you want to go and compare, if you're in North Korea and you defect into China, once you're in China, you probably know you probably will be experiencing freedom beyond your dreams compared to what life is like in North Korea. And and so that's another thing I want to point out when he went into his anti-communist rhetoric afterwards. And the thing about it is that all socio-economic systems have caused crimes against the people. Capitalism has caused a lot of crimes against humanity. Feudalism has caused a lot of crimes against humanity, and communism did too. And so they all are guilty, every one of them. But you know what? A lot of good communists have contributed to the world. There's even a lot of good that capitalists have contributed to the world. And so to say that if you're not a capitalist, you side with genocide and murder. Or if you're a communist and you say the same thing about, do the blanket indictment against all capitalists, same thing. And I'm not a communist and I'm not a capitalist. I am an old-fashioned, if you're not familiar with the term, third camp internationalist, which it derived out of a Trotskyist movement in the 1930s, early in 1940s. And it kind of crept into the socialist movement. Unfortunately, some of the people within that third camp movement entered into a neoconservative direction. And that's where I distance myself in that regard. And I have no part of that. But third camp in its form, kind of, those who practiced third camp internationalism during the Cold War were skeptical of Washington, D.C. and Moscow. And that's where that's kind of genuinely where I've always been as a practicing socialist. And when it comes to working on good causes, I don't care if you practice capitalism. I don't care if you practice communism. What I care about is on projects where we can all agree to work together. Let's go ahead and work together to bring it to justice. For example, when it comes to trade union activism and everything, and communists are involved, and I'm going to be like, ew, I'm not going to work with them because they're communists. I'm going to embrace them and be like, comrade, let's go and strengthen the union movement. An area where I'm probably have to go and side with the right wing would be, the anti-socialists, the anti-communists, those who practice capitalism, and they're correct on this issue, is the creeping censorship that's being practiced by some on the liberal left, and not the far left, although some on the far left would, but today, a lot of mainstream liberals are doing what social conservatives did decades ago, and many social conservatives are still in favor of censorship. Don't ever believe it when the Glenn Becks of the world, and the Rush Limbaughs of the world, and the Sean Hannitys of the world, and the Mark Levins of the world, and the Ben Shapiro's of the world, and the Steven Crowders of the world, and Dinesh D'Souza's of the world will tell you that they're free speech warriors. They're not. But there are conservatives, there are libertarians, paleo conservatives, there are those on the right that are fully in favor of freedom of speech, and they're consistent about it. And on that, I will say, hey, we're partners. We agree on question when it comes to free speech. So I don't care where you stand on whatever issue. If you're correct on something, I'm willing to work with you, and we may have our disagreements, but we can work together. So that's basically what I want to say, and I'm kind of pontificating again. But when it comes to communism, this is where Glenn Beck gets it wrong. There are some areas where communism has contributed to a lot of good in this world. Look at what happened in Cambodia under the Khmer Rouge. I know Khmer Rouge were a communist organization, but they were so fucked up that the Soviets and the Vietnamese were like, when they were back in the days of communism during the Cold War, they were like, man, this is fucked up. We can't allow this. Vietnam came in and they liberated the people of Cambodia. They liberated the people of Cambodia against the war crimes of the Khmer Rouge, of Pol Pot. How did the United States respond to that? The United States and China partner up with the Khmer Rouge, and I forgot the name of the other person, the other movement. That was there was like some factions. There was like a coalition of special interests or factions on the left and right that were trying to overthrow the occupied government by the Vietnamese occupied government in Cambodia at the time. So, and because the United States got themselves butthurt from the Vietnam War, they decided to do this even though they were indirectly supporting the Khmer Rouge in the process. Sort of like what's going on today with this skirmish between Russia and Ukraine. The United States opposing Russia are indirectly supporting Nazis in Ukraine. I want you all to think about that for a moment. And we know that Hillary Clinton and the Democrats are on this. Russia! Russia! What are we going to do? I'm so scared of Russia! They're doing that. But here, think about Russia is this. Lindsey Graham, the late John McCain, Glenn Beck himself are all about, Russia. Ooh, they're the boogeyman. They're the boogeyman. They're the boogeyman. They're doing that too. So while they're doing that, you got to pause for a second, think about it. That when they're engaging in this sort of thing, there is kind of an unspoken alliance between the neolibs that contaminate the Democratic Party and the neocons that contaminate the Republican Party. And for those that want to say, well, the Republican Party has gotten rid of their neocons, if that was the case, they would be listening to people like Rand Paul a little bit more and a hell of a lot less from people like Lindsey Graham. Make no mistake about that. But let's go into, hold tight here. I want to share some additional commentary. Well, let me start with somebody that I'm a little perplexed by at the moment, and that's Kim Iverson. Now, while I have a problem with some political positions of Kim Iverson and her saying she's going to vote Republican in this coming election, I do have a problem with that, but that's on her. She can do whatever the hell she wants to do. She's a grown woman, and she's a little eccentric, and she's a little weird, but you know what? She's telling the truth about the Uyghurs with regard to China. She's correct, and Glenn Beck is wrong. I first heard about the Uyghurs from Kim Iverson. And while I have some problems with Kim Iverson, she is correct about the Uyghurs. And I would trust her, even now, I would trust her words over Glenn Beck's words any day. You can bank on it. So, but let's go back to Glenn Beck. Can we go back to Glenn Beck? Do we have to go back to Glenn Beck? Well, let's go back to Glenn Beck. Do you remember the 2016 election? Remember the Republican primaries? Glenn Beck, one reason to disregard Glenn Beck is that Glenn Beck was a never Trumper in 2016. He was pro Ted Cruz all the way. Glenn Beck talked shit day after day after day on his radio show about what a piece of shit Donald Trump is. So, and think about it, if you listen to him, he hated Donald Trump for the wrong reasons. He thought that Donald Trump was too liberal. You see, a lot of people seem to forget that never Trumpers tend to be Republicans who hated Donald Trump, not because he was too far right. They hated Donald Trump because they thought he was too liberal. They thought he was too based. And they used things like in the past where Donald Trump said he was pro-choice on abortion, and he even now seemingly don't have a problem with the LGBTQ community, although he did have to appease the evangelicals while he was president on some really shitty policies in that regard. But honestly, yeah, he did not fit the Republican mold in 2016 running as an outsider, because into year 2000, 2004, in that time period, he was favoring Medicare for all, talking about Donald Trump. Yeah, I mean, bring that Donald Trump back. What the fuck happened? But later on, during 2016 primaries, he was a Ted Cruz supporter, Glenn Beck, and he expressed nothing. He expressed the kind of hatred for Donald Trump that I expressed for Hillary Clinton in 2016 when it came to Bernie Sanders. So, but he thought that Donald Trump was an awful person, and he even considered voting for Hillary Clinton. He ended up voting for some third-party candidate, referring to Glenn Beck. So the fact that he was a Ted Cruz supporter should tell you something about him. But while Donald Trump was the president, while he was president during his 4 years in power, while Glenn Beck was starting to be admired by those in the liberal centrist community, even being on shit shows like The View and all that, a transformation happened to Glenn Beck. He discovered that Donald Trump was much more conservative on policies to the point where he was very, very happy about it. And so he went from being a never Trumper to buying that goofy red cap that said "Make America Great Again," and he proclaimed his simpness for Donald Trump. He became a Donald Trump sycophant. And the worst kind of political people in this country are people who were never Trumpers in 2016, who hated Trump because he was not right-wing enough, that ended up being pro-Donald Trump because he ended up governing more right-wing beyond their dreams. So this is the kind of mentality we're dealing with. So, and for that, I say that Glenn Beck is a piece of shit. Fuck you, Glenn Beck. Fuck you. Yeah. You're just every bit as much of a prick as you were during the Bush-Cheney years and the Obama years. Yes, you were. So fuck you, Glenn Beck. Fuck you. So anyway, if you like what you heard, well, before I do that, we have a chat line here, so we're going to chat. Let's see. I'm in a lot of leftist Facebook groups. It saddens me how fractured the left is on Facebook. There's a lot of faction fights on the right too. I mean, it's just something that's going to happen. Trust me. I was in the Socialist Party USA, and you want a faction fight, you will get a faction fight. I had a co-worker who was a libertarian, and I don't mean he was just like in the Libertarian Party. He was like libertarian, like anarcho-capitalist, Austrian school. They drank the Kool-Aid out of the, Ludwig van Mises Institute, that type of libertarian. And he really pushed the envelope as far as he could. And that question. And we had some lively discussions. He was cool to talk to, believe it or not. But within the libertarian movement, they're like the socialists. They will tell people you're a sellout for not believing in this and you're not believing in that, and it can be a shitstorm when the libertarians interfight with each other. I will tell you something about myself. I was very distraught after the 2016 election. Seeing Bernie Sanders getting crushed by Hillary Clinton, voting third party, as I normally do on election day, and having people telling me I'm a piece of shit because I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. I caused Donald Trump to win the election. I did not. But, and I thought about it. I thought about joining. I even debated joining the Libertarian Party and wanting to work within the Socialist Caucus within the Libertarian Party. Yes, there is a Socialist Caucus within the Libertarian Party. But I was like, no, because I would just get into a faction fight with the Libertarians in the same way I did with fellow Socialists. So I don't have any time for that. So I thought, I was like, right now, we're trying to get the Green Party back on the ballot in North Carolina, and that is my... as far as electoral affiliation, that's how I'm voting these days. So, there you have it. Let's see. Anarchists and Marxist-Leninism are like oil and water. Yeah, they do have a lot of they do have a lot to reconcile, I guess. But yeah, it's just a fact of life. There's always going to be disunity, unfortunately, even in the most benevolence of movements. Let's see here. Right wing libertarians make me want to puke. Well, yeah, especially if. I'll go into that in a second. Right wing libertarians make me want to puke. Usually the ones I know lie about being libertarians. They simp for Trump. There is an element of truth to that. And even prior to the rise of Donald Trump, I ran across libertarian people who claims they were libertarians. And they're like, I'm not really a Republican. I'm more of a libertarian than anything else. So, and I would be like, oh, so that means you support gay, lesbian marriage, right? No, don't support that. So you're pro-choice, right, on abortion? No, I'm not pro-choice on abortion. So yeah, so you oppose these wars abroad? No. We got to go and teach these Muslims that they can't fuck with the West. So you favor the legalization of marijuana, right? Oh, no. I don't favor the legalization of marijuana. And I was like, damn, they're basically, I'm thinking to myself, they're basically just Republicans. And I'll ask these people, so what is it that's libertarian about your ideology? Oh, I'm what you call an economic libertarian, a small government. I mean, that's what I run across. Now, I do run across some libertarians that are, they're really pro pot legalization. They're basically hippies that believe in Reaganomics. I mean, I do run across those kind of people, and they're not the worst people around, but they're wrong on the economics. In fact, I do a lot of internet fighting with one of my friends on Facebook from college. He drank the libertarian Kool-Aid. He's a good guy, but he is very, very pro-economic libertarianism, and I am a socialist. And we can't reconcile the questions on when it comes to socialism versus economic libertarianism. We never discuss social issues because there's really nothing to discuss when it comes to social issues. We are roughly on the same page on virtually everything. So almost everything. There's probably a few little issues here and there, and they're not big enough to fight over. So we don't fight over these whatever few social issues. He as a libertarian and myself as a socialist would find in a very contemptful, way. So anyway, Skywarp, it's great seeing you online here. And to everybody else, if you like what you heard, press like and comment. If you disagree, comment anyway. Feel free to share the content on this channel. As a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it because we are the muckrakers of our time. Subscribe to this channel and defeat the algorithm. Goons on YouTube that wants to shut us down and shadow ban. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you're a first timer, hit that subscribe button. It's that easy. And until next time, keep that class struggle going. Raise that red flag high. And remember, we're all Julian Assange. And right now, I will conclude with music. Hopefully not an ad. Oh. How the hell that happened?